I wanted to share a little bit about some of the history of graphic design and what you might be able to think about as a new approach, or how you could work on your project that you're heading on, just including history a little bit as best I can in this kind of field. So I'm going to show you one way to think about it is pictorial modernism, and I'll kind of come back to that topic in a little bit. Around the 1890s and at that turn of the century, design was done in a particular way. It had a central figure, and often that figure was in an animated gesture of some kind. There was movement going on. There was maybe some shadow. There was some color in the background. There might have been another character, a secondary person, or props kind of giving you more of a context of where you were. And this was done, again, we have depth. We play with what we should see first, second, and third, and just showing movement a lot. Sometimes that was simplified, of course, but you might have seen some of these posters around. They're done by Lautrec. As with any movement in art or design, there's always a redirection, and a lot of creators, a lot of developers at that time wanted to go more organic. They wanted to go more busy. They wanted to go more natural in terms of plants. And so you see the backgrounds change, the textures change, the use of plant-like, or each of the figures in these had what was called spaghetti hair, kind of the effect. This was built off of more along the Art Nouveau movement throughout the world. And this use actually looked at playing with that use of pattern, and the world wasn't necessarily real. You can tell by looking at this. Just showing some different effects, no use of text, a lot of use of imagery and texture. There were magazine covers. The theory was back in that time that their audience was a female, and so they went with that approach for things. I know that's changed, and we're not that specific anymore. So that's why I'm just kind of showing you these as examples of the way that color was used, the way of simple shapes was used, the way of text changed, and still told the same story. The first designer and the designers before this time period were all men, and finally women started being involved in illustration and design, and this designer was the name of Ethel Reed, and we'll kind of just showing you what some of her work looked like at that time, and how especially in this case, how the character, the figure, looked completely different and maybe more realistic. There was a designer by the name of Lucien Bernhard who created this poster back in the day, and it was actually it was a contest basically, and he went one direction and started simplifying because, as I incorrectly may have stated in class, that individuals saw a table and they saw a cigar and they saw like a restaurant kind of format, when actually this was for a promotional piece for a match company. So he simplified it, and he did just paid attention to the background, the brand name, and the product. That was his approach, and he used this in every design. Kind of simple, sending that message of what it is. Simple background, object or product, and text, company name. You could do something like this for your project where you might add more to it, of course, but you could keep it that simple if you really wanted to. People noticed that this was called the object poster, and literally just an object of what it is that was being advertised. Simple to catch on to, simple to understand, simple to see, and from there. So just some of his work as a designer, and completely changed it. And kind of where we are, we're using color and shapes to help tell that story. Here's a different one that actually some other designers started using negative space more, and this poster is for a car, and you'll notice the shoulders and the neck of this individual in the background. We understand it, but we don't have all the line that we needed. And there were two brothers, the Beggarstaffs were their name, who did this same approach in kind of an influential way. They didn't make it long term, from what I can understand, but what they did was the term they used were they were drawing with cutouts or drawing with scissors. And so they would take a colored background and then simplify, just using the positive and negative space to finish the subject, whatever it was. So here you can see we don't see the shins on the figure, we don't see the shoulder on the figure, but we can understand what it is that we're noticing just by that play of positive and the use of negative space to do that. The figure on the left here, or on the sofa, is not drawn. It's not completed. It's using the negative space to help tell that story. So just showing you some different examples of how you could simplify your project that you're working on. Use the color in the background to bring it forward to you. Just simple. And thinking about how can I use color, how can I use shape, and how can I use text, in this case the date, to understand a little bit more. So just showing you some examples, showing you some things to think about as you work on your project.